Hello, Joe here with gardenofluma.com, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about growing sapodilla trees. I grew up in northern Michigan, grew up on cherries and stone fruits. Had no idea what a lot of these different tropical fruits were like. When I got connected with growing tropical fruit trees here in the Phoenix, Arizona area, naturally I did everything I could to try a lot of these different fruits in various ethnic markets, international markets, anywhere I could find these tropical fruits, and I just love sapodillas. Sapodillas have a brown sugar cinnamon taste if you like cinnamon toast, or if you're a fan of like cinnamon and those types of spices and cookies or sweets or whatever, you will definitely love sapodillas. They kind of have the texture of a pear, juicy with that a little bit of graininess like a pear, and the flesh is really similar to a pear. On the outside of the fruit has almost like a kiwi type of skin, a little bit fuzzy, rough, that brown, kind of looks similar to like a potato or a kiwi. But they are just excellent fruits, one of my favorite tropical fruits. So I highly recommend trying one. If you haven't had one, find one somewhere. And so I definitely had to grow one of these trees. I have two growing in my backyard right now. I have a Tikal sapodilla that's growing in the ground, as well as a Silas woods variety growing in a container. And so I've been growing these fruit trees for a couple years now. And I found that these trees do quite well here in our hot, dry climates. Still haven't got fruit on them yet, but I'm hopeful for the future. I have seen some trees around our area that do have fruit or have had fruit, so it is definitely possible here. But I think that hot, dry air definitely affects the pollination as well as holding the fruit and flowers, I've noticed. So we'll see how it goes, but they are an attractive tree to grow otherwise, and I'm really hopeful to get some fruit on them. So let's take a look at my trees, and I'll give you a few insights on what I do to grow these trees here in a hot, dry climate. All right, let's take a look. Here is my Tikal sapodilla. I purchased this guy in spring of 2016. We moved into my current residence in December of 2016. So this guy went through a couple different transplants. Originally I had it in a container, then I put it in the ground at my old residence, and I had to uproot it to bring it with me to the new house. It was in a pot for a little while before it finally settled in here. So it did suffer a little bit the first year with all the different transplants it went through, but it's a pretty resilient tree. And this is one of my favorite trees in my yard. I just love the look of these sapodilla trees and the way they grow, the way the foliage looks on them. And so, as you can see here, it's doing quite well. It's mid-November right here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And we have had a few cold snaps that just kind of came out of the blue. They were really early, where we dipped into the 30s. And you can kind of see some of that on this tree. So like that leaf there, they get kind of like a reddish color to them. Show you another one right there, you can see. So that's kind of like what they show when they get a little cold to them, those reddish colored leaves. You can see that more in the wintertime here. And as you can see around it, I'm getting ready to put my frost structure up here. So I usually do that in late November. And so I put the plastic wrap around this to protect it in the winter time, since we do occasionally dip under freezing here at night here in the desert. But this tree is a slow growing tree, but grows steadily. You have probably 2 main growth flushes a year on this tree, in the spring and late summer. And usually around those growth flushes is when it flowers as well. So I'll get a heavy flower in the spring, and then later in the summer, late summer, last year I had some around this time as well. So it kind of flowered a little bit going into the winter, but I don't see any flowers on it currently. And this year I did get one fruit set that was really small, but it ended up dropping off in wind. So hopefully next year I'll start getting some more fruit set as this tree matures and settles in and gets a little bit older. I do mulch this guy pretty heavy, compost a few times a year, and then just fertilize with liquid seaweed and fish emulsion throughout the growing season. All right, let me show you my Silas wood Sapodilla. All right, here's my Silas wood Sapodilla, kind of wedged in here between a couple plants. I brought it closer to the patio since we're getting a little cooler here. And as you can see, those red leaves that I was talking about before, more prominent on this tree here on the new growth. And so you don't see that on the new growth during the spring and summer. So it's definitely something that comes with colder temps that affects that discoloration. And so this guy I typically bring indoors when we dip below 35, those few nights that we get throughout the winter where we get around freezing, just because it's a little bit smaller and it is in a container, as you can see here. So I'm able to bring this one indoors when I need to. And since this is a dwarf variety, it's a really great tree for container growing. I mean, most sapodillas you can grow in a container because they are such slow growing trees, and you can keep them at a relatively small size because of that. But this one specifically is meant for containers just because of its dwarf growth habit. It is supposed to fruit prolifically at a small size. I have yet to get any fruit on this tree. It does flower in the springtime, and that's it. Like my Tikal Sapodilla flowers throughout the year. And I've heard of this tree in tropical climates like South Florida and things, flowering and fruiting throughout the year, but I have not seen that with this tree as of yet. I was a little devastated because this tree was like 3 times the size of this. I had a big windstorm this year and just snapped the tree down here. And as you can see, this branch I've tied upright was just like a scraggly branch here at the base that I almost pruned off, but now I'm glad I didn't because I wouldn't really have much of a tree if I did. And so, I mean, this guy was like probably going on 6 feet tall, but it just completely snapped in that windstorm, which sucked because this thing was such a nice looking healthy tree, but it is bouncing back and recovering. And I've noticed that this tree is a little bit more vigorous growing than my Tikal that's in the ground. It's still not like a mulberry tree or whatever, just flying out of the container growing so fast, but it is more of a steady grower than my other Sapodilla. And I don't know if that has something to do with being grown in a container and the soil is a little bit different. And the one in the ground has that clay soil, more high pH and things. So maybe that has something to do with it. More controlled here in this container. I don't know. But otherwise, it has been a little bit steadier growing tree. Okay, thanks for checking out my Sapodilla trees and checking out this video here. Take a look at gardenofluma.com. I give more insight, more in-depth tips on how to grow different tropical fruit trees, garden, and grow fruits in hot, dry climates. Thanks a lot.